Well, hello. My name is LaQuita Parks, and this is another episode of The Power of Your Story. We are here live today, and we are talking about the power of your story. And today, I have a special guest, and life happens. And today, life has happened to my guest because he had to go to a meeting at his son's school and he is not here yet. So we are still waiting for him to come on. And in the meantime, we're going to talk about staying motivated through crisis. So I am LaQuita Parks and I am your host. And I am the owner of V Publishing. And V means pain, progress, victory, because I believe without pain, there is no progress. And without progress, there can be no victory. So I help people take their stories from a thought to a realization, no matter where you are in your story writing journey. And man, I can talk about crisis. If the last 2 years, almost 3 years, hasn't taught us anything, it's about crisis mode. COVID-19 has been one big crisis mode. We have been inundated with wear masks, don't wear masks, sanitizing. There has been so much, not to mention sickness and loss of life. And I don't know about you, but I am so tired of this crisis. I'm ready to be in a different mode. But today, when my guest comes on, he's going to talk to us about staying motivated through crisis. And so, a little bit about me and my story, because there is power in your story. So about me, I am the author of a book called Walking Limitations. And Walking Limitations is all about my story. And this is Walking Limitations, and this is my story. And I talk about being thrust into a crisis situation when I was 4 years old and I went into the hospital to have my tonsils removed. I went in the hospital, tonsils were coming out. It was supposed to be a simple procedure and into crisis. My crisis started when a nurse walked into my room and jabbed me in the thigh with a needle. And so you can only imagine that as the news goes on and there's talk about the jab, that's what people call the vaccination. Are you going to get the jab? To get the jab and not the jab? Well, it does something to my spirit when I hear that, because my issue started with a jab. I was the wrong patient. So going through life in crisis mode, I have had one surgery after another surgery after another surgery, and that was crisis mode. I had children, a single mother. I was married and went through a nasty divorce, crisis mode. My children grew up in a single parent home and it was just me. So we always had to do there was always something going on. So as a single mother with 3 kids, there's always something going on. And we always had to move quick because everything was on one. There was no balance. Everything was on me. So I had to make sure that everybody had what they needed, even when I didn't have what I needed. Talk about crisis mode. Then, in the midst of all that, I decided I wanted to go back to school and get my college degree. Boy, talk about crisis mode. But that was a good thing because I was doing something to better my future and the future of my children. So, how do you stay motivated when you're in crisis mode? Well, number one, you got to stay positive. And I know for a fact it is difficult to remain positive when people are sick around you and people are dying around you. It's difficult to do. But how do you do that? How do you stay positive? How do you stay motivated? Well, number one, don't take it personal. And you're probably listening to this or viewing this and saying, how can you not take it personal when it's crisis and it's your crisis? Well, on the one hand, it's happening to you, but you're not the only one that it's happening to. And I know that sounds a little wacky, but when things happen in our lives, it's not happening to us. There's always an incident or always a situation where something has happened similarly to someone else that's happening to you. So you don't take it personal. I have a good friend who once said to me, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can be the best thing for you, provided you don't let it get the better of you. Okay, so let me say that again. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can be the best thing for you, provided you don't let it get the better of you. So I know that sounds like some jibber jabber, right? No, it doesn't. The best thing that happens to you, or rather the worst thing that happens to you. So in our case, let's look at this huge crisis across the whole world. So the crisis was COVID. COVID hit. It didn't just happen to me. It didn't just happen to you. It didn't just happen to my family. It didn't just happen to your family. It happened to the entire world at the same time. Yes, the virus was uncovered in some areas before it really spread in other areas, but it was happening to us at the same time. So you have family that lives in another state or in another country, like I do. My dad lives in Yakima, Washington, and I live here in Georgia. So it was happening to us at the same time. And here's the thing: we were all quarantined, not quarantined. We were all under social distancing at the same time, which means you couldn't go if you were not a first responder, you couldn't go out. There were mandates, you couldn't go out on the street, you had to stay home. And that was for a long time. So some families got closer while other families fell apart. Some spouses got closer while other spouses fell apart. Relationships were built and strengthened, and some relationships were torn apart. Crisis, and it stemmed from the COVID-19 that was happening all across the world. Then there was the sickness. There were people being sick and they didn't know why. They had no idea. It was a flu, what we thought was the flu. And some people had a really, really bad case of the flu, which turned out to be COVID-19. And some people didn't make it. I don't know about you, but I know that there are many, many people who had family members who passed. I know a friend of mine had 14 people in her family to pass away from the COVID virus. And you know what? I know this person, and she is always very, very strong, always very encouraging. And when you look at her, she always has a smile on her face. And you would not know it that she was really grieving inside. So, talk about crisis. And then in my own family, I had an uncle, an aunt, another uncle to pass all within a year of each other. I had my uncle and my aunt to pass within months of each other. And crisis mode. We have lost more people. I know I've lost more people, and I've lost friends more than any time in my life. And I know I'm still young. I'm just a young 52 years old. But crisis. So, how is it that one stays motivated through crisis? Well, I'm going to tell you how you don't do it. Number one, you don't stay motivated by watching the news 17 times a day. And I was guilty of that, watching the news 17 times a day. So when this virus first hit, I'm like everybody else. I want to know what's going on, what's happening. How am I going to survive through this? What's going on? I want to know what the numbers are. I want to know what the numbers are in my area. I want to know what the numbers are in my sister's area, in my dad's area, where my aunt lived, where my children live. I want to know what those numbers were, because I want to know how safe we were, or should we get into panic mode? And then we didn't know what to do. I have a son that works at the hospital, and he would call and say, this thing is serious, mom, you need to stay home. And I had it. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I am all into talking about crisis mode, and how to stay motivated through crisis. And I am sharing my experience with the COVID, and how to stay motivated. But I am so excited that the expert is here now, who can talk about staying motivated through crisis mode. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing great. Thank you for your grace. I appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure. Listen, one thing about it, life happens. Life happens, and you can't do anything about that. There is nothing you can do about life happening. I have been the recipient of life happening, not necessarily the way that I wanted it to happen, but you know what? I learned how to weave and bob and roll with the punches.
Yeah,
And so keep it
definitely.
going, keeping a smile on your face through adversity. So thank you so much for coming. And will you please introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into our conversation.
Well, hello everybody. Again, thank you so much, Ms. Parks. I appreciate you. I'm Jay Harleem. I am a serial entrepreneur, three-time author, business coach, corporate trainer, a host of other things, dad, husband. Keep going, the list goes on and on. Actually, you live long enough, you become more and more things. So,
Yes, yes, you do. So tell us about, and so you missed the introduction. We are just meeting, and I've had the
mhm.
opportunity to speak with your assistant, and she's very pleasant. And so thank you so much for reaching out to be a part of this show. And this is the power of your story. And I
Mm,
believe everybody has a story. So with my company, Pay Pro V Publishing, and Pay Pro V means pain, progress, victory, because
mm,
I believe without pain, there's no progress, and without progress, there can be no victory. So I help people take their stories from a thought to a realization, because you and I both know that 100% of everybody living and dead has a story.
yes,
and
definitely.
and as we live and breathe, our story keeps unfolding. And just like you said, the older you get, the more years you pile on, the more your story grows. And what you do with that story determines, to me, what you do with that story determines your output into the world, the difference that you make into the world.
I
So
agree.
my story, a little bit about my story, started when I was 4 years old, and I went into the hospital to have my tonsils removed, and it was a success. But through the night, a nurse came in my room and jabbed me in the thigh with a needle. I was the wrong patient, poisoning the bone in my leg. And from there, they rushed me into surgery to amputate my leg. And my life from that point to this one has been a medical tsunami. uh,
Wow.
I I've had 14 surgeries on my right leg and foot, and those surgeries catapulted other things to happen. So I've probably had a total of about 30 surgeries throughout my body, stemming from that one shot. And they told my
Wow.
mom I'd never walk again. I do walk. I was able to walk again. I learned how to walk again, but not without pain. I've never known a day without pain since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
So I know how to stay motivated. I do my best to stay motivated and help others. That's why Pay-Per V Publishing is so important to me, because I'm a no excuses kind of person. Life happens. But I'm like, hey, dude, I'm sitting here talking to you in pain, so we can do something else. We can do something better. So that's my
Definitely.
story, and I'm sticking to it. So I'm interested in hearing your story, and I want you to tell me about this. You won't starve, I won't starve. I'm really curious about that.
Well, again, I'm from Newark, New Jersey, born and raised, but I was born and raised in the crack era. Everything that everybody making the movies about now, and they talk about the Joe Biden situation back before he was even thought about being the president. I went through all of that. My family was hit hard by the crack epidemic. My grandmother had 8 children. 7 out of the 8 were strung out on drugs. Only one that was able to get away from it. He left as soon as he graduated high school, never came back. But everyone that stayed in New Jersey was strung out, including my mom. And so my grandmother took care of her own 8 children, but then she was able to get full custody of the first 10 of her grandchildren. So her raising all of us, 15 people in a 3-bedroom apartment, which I always tell people that was probably a 2 with a bonus room. But back in the day, they knew how to make it work. And so
Yes.
that's how it was. And I didn't see anything but that, a lot of drug use. And back in the day, those rappers wasn't talking about us using drugs. They were talking about selling them. So, I wanted to make some money. I wanted to do some things. I was always a good kid, never dropped out of school. But how I made my money was nefarious ways. I became a little bit of a juvenile delinquent, going back and forth from the DJJ or wherever you are. Up there we call it the youth house. But I still was in school. Didn't I graduated, even though I wasn't at my graduation because I was in the county jail. So it was just
Okay.
tough. But I was able to get squeaked through to college, and of course, with the smacks on the wrist, went to college, got in some more trouble. And at this point, now I'm a felon. Again, still graduated school on the dean's list, but I couldn't get a job. Um, and so I had to go into entrepreneurship. So I had to use those negative skills that I had to turn it into a positive. I really got serious about it when I finally reconnected with my mom, because my mom actually left me when I was 11 years old, and the guy she left with died of an overdose, and she wanted to
Mm.
get clean. And my mother went back to my grandmother, but she still held a grudge, so she said she couldn't stay with her. She asked me did I want to take her in, and I was about 24 years old at the time. I let her come and stay with me, and I helped her kick her heroin habit on my couch. And at that point, I was like, I'm good on that now, no more. I don't even want to do anything like that no more. So I just went completely legit and started my business journey. It was going well until the economy went crazy back in '08, between '08 to 2010. We had to move back to South Carolina, where I went to college at, and start all over again, where I became a felon. And that started at I had to take an $8 an hour job. My wife was pregnant with my son. We were living bad. We threatened to get put out of our house, repossession of cars, all that good stuff. And I had to do what I had to do. So I took an $8 an hour job. But I went to a TD Jakes conference about 6 months in, and he told me, this is when he was putting out his book Instinct. He didn't tell me, he just told the whole crowd. He put a
Mm.
lion out on stage, and he said, this lion has been in the cage all his life. He said, so why are we holding him in the cage? It's all he ever known. He said, but we're afraid that his instinct will kick in, and he'll remember who he is, and he'll
Mhm.
know he is a lion and hurt somebody. And he said, that's one of you guys in this audience right here. Somebody's like that. And I just started crying, and everybody who was with me said that he's talking to you. And a couple months later, I literally got an office for my business, and I left my job. And that's why I Won't Starve came, because everybody was like, hey, you just starting to come around, and you're trying to do the right thing. Why are you going out off into this business thing? I just knew I was better than that. And instead of me getting mad at everybody, I just was telling them I won't starve. And that hashtag grew life. Over the years, I would just, whenever I was a photographer, and when I have a big shoot, because I went from just shooting whatever somebody would pay me for to working with the WNBA to the NBA to NFL, shooting the Super Bowl to in a lot of major works that I've done. And so I will always put hashtag I Won't Starve whenever I had a big shoot or a big
Mhm.
event, and I would just let people know, and then people got motivated behind it. And I started using it, and I started putting shirts on, branding the way I do, and it just grew. And now I own the hashtag, I Won't Starve, and I have it copyright and trademarked and everything like that. But it just became a motivational tool. It was a mantra for me. So for my yoga people, it was my mantra. Then it became a message, and now it's a movement. A lot of
Yeah.
people, talk to me about I Won't Starve. You see people wearing shirts, and people have my books and all that good stuff like that. But I Won't Starve just was something that I needed to say to myself to get me through whenever I thought that I was in over my head. Like, you'll be all right, you'll be fine. I didn't know it was going to touch people like it did. Then I made it into an LLC where I started helping people, African Americans and minorities get business contracts with the government, like I did. Because again, as a photographer, I became very successful working with government, local,
Mhm.
state, and federal government, and they would always talk about these minority quotas that they had to meet. But I wasn't seeing people that looked like me in those rooms, and
Uh-huh.
so it wasn't just
'Cause we
me
didn't
at
know.
that.
We didn't know.
Exactly, exactly. So I was there, and then my team grew. We wasn't just taking pictures, and we was filming major functions where we should have been in the room, but we weren't in the room. And
Mhm.
so I made my relationships so solid to where I was able to go to these organizations, go to the local, state, and federal government organizations, and say, "Hey, how can we partner up where I can bring the minorities here to you?" And
Mhm.
through my company, I Won't Starve LLC, I was able to do that to the tune of working with over 500 different companies and helping them get certified and do business with the government.
Oh, awesome. I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing. There are a lot of people, and I hope there are people, and we'll do this is live and we'll do a replay where people will listen to it, especially young people who feel like they can't do something. I have a mentoring program called A Failure to Communicate. And when I
Mm,
talk to young people, we talk about putting yourselves in positions where you're making some choices and you have a felony and you can get hired. But here you have skills,
yeah,
and taking those skills and turning those skills into money, get paid for those skills. And even if you don't have a felony, everybody's not college material.
yeah,
And
you're right.
going to college now, you got to pay, you got to weigh the options. Okay, should I go and have all this student loan if I can't afford to pay it right off? My parents can't afford to pay for it. Or do I become an entrepreneur? And it's hard work, but it's definitely worth it.
Yeah,
It's
for
definitely
sure.
worth it. So you have the I won't starve, you won't starve, and the you won't starve is tell me about that one.
You Won't Starve is my second baby, my second book baby. Key principles of entrepreneur development. What I was doing during my workshops that I created and partnered with the individuals, I would train the new entrepreneurs and the minority entrepreneurs, and then I would set them up for the city, the county, the state, the federal government to serve them how I wasn't able to serve them. So they can give them a certain kind of contract, or I had banks that work with me. They can help them get their financial situation together. I had Midlands Technical College, which is a local college. They needed some more training. And I was able to get discounts for people, or sometimes they got in programs for free because they came through my program. And once I wrote I Won't Starve, I was going around touring, doing this training because I started doing it in South Carolina. But once the book came, I started going to other places. But once the pandemic hit, I was kind of everybody was shut down. You couldn't really go
Right.
nowhere. So I put my training in this book,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of specified it for Gen Zers, millennials, and baby boomers. And this is where my career kind of pivoted from photography, which I'm still a gifted photographer and everything like that. But in 2020, all of my clientele was in the house.
Yeah.
For the whole time. I mean, the federal government hadn't taken no headshots until probably this year. So you got 2 years and people wasn't doing that type of stuff. And so all of the other work that I was doing paid off because I went ahead and wrote this book, and people all over the country started wanting me to do trainings and
Mm-hmm.
paying me to do that. And I was very successful with selling my books. And so, and I was bit by the book bug. So after that point, I was like, hey, I'm an author. I really enjoyed it. And I just kept training, and I got certified to be a coach, and a certified trainer, and a certified trainers trainer. So I just kept elevating, my skill sets. And so that's what I was doing. But my goal for You Won't Starve is to teach people how to do what I did, because I did it unorthodox. And I don't tell people in my teachings how to do what other people are telling them to do. I tell them truth. And because my people don't all need $50,000 to get a business started. They don't need $5,000 to get a business started. I think it's great to have it, but a lot of us are trying to figure out a way to survive and to eat and to live. And I speak in my book from that space, not starting a business as a luxury. And I wanted to directly talk to my people in this space.
I like that. You're right. I'm so glad you said that, because there are people who are right now sitting on the side of the bed saying, "Man, I don't like this job that I have, and I have this talent over here, but I don't have $5,000 to start a new business. Or if I take five
Hmm.
thousand dollars out of my household, then my husband's gonna be upset, or my wife's gonna be upset, or even I don't need $10,000. There is a certain thing that says just push, just do it. And I like that you said unorthodox, because we are a lot of times we're steady looking at, I call it the Google. We go to the Google and find out how somebody else did something, and it's a million different ways, and all of the Google is doing is telling you how somebody else did it. This is the way that they did it. And being able to say, you know what, this is the way that I did it, this is what worked for me, and it's different from what you've seen. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try it. What worked for Bill Gates might not work for me. It's not going to work for me. What worked for somebody else might not work for me, but it might. Also, all of their things that work for them, I may be able to try this and it may work for me, and this may not. But being able to go through and try it, I like that because when you go through, you have this whole checklist of, check off what you need, what you need, what you need. And if you don't check off everything on that list, then that list is staring back at you, and all you're seeing is, I can't do this. When there are so many different ways to do it. I'm a I'm in Georgia, and when I started my publishing company, I was at the Mayo Clinic. I was at the Mayo Clinic when the pandemic in 2019, in November and December of 2019, and January and February of 2020. So right when the pandemic was starting. And February was my last time at the Mayo Clinic in 2020. And the doctor said to me, while you're not dying, you are suffering. And I didn't hear anything else but suffering. I didn't hear
Wow.
not dying. All I heard was suffering. And in my head, I was like, this is not my life. This
Yeah.
can be, Jay, I didn't even hear the rest of the diagnosis. All I heard
That's how it
was,
works.
you're not dying, you are suffering. And he was like, everything has its own pain source. And while he's saying that to me, I'm trying to figure it out in my head. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's my next step? I don't want to be receiving government assistance. I don't want to be receiving disability. What's my next steps? And at the same time, the answer was already given to me, because I believe God has already gifted us with everything we need to do what we need to do. So while I was at the Mayo Clinic, I had already published 2 books for somebody else. And then it said, okay, well,
Yeah.
you know what? You already have this program. You already have that program. You already do mentoring. You already do coaching. You might as well do this. You've created. And I was like, you know what? I can do that. And so I just did it. My Nike says just do it. My nephew did a graph. He said just did it. So I just did it. And at the
I
same
like
time,
that.
there were people that didn't look like me saying that I can't do it. You can't do that. And I'm
Yeah.
stubborn enough to figure out, well, why not? And
Hmm.
that's why people like you are important, because you're telling people who look like you that you can do whatever it is you want to do, but there is work involved.
Definitely. Definitely. And also you just got to some of the work is internal. A lot of the work is internal, knowing yourself, because at the end of the day, you can look at what somebody else is doing, but how does that fit you? And so for me, I never wanted to be nobody else, but I do understand how to be inspired and still not copy. So
Right.
I would say, okay, yes, Bill Gates did this, but I'm not no computer whiz. So
Right.
what part fits me? And if it doesn't, I need to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, in our community, somebody with a camera is not, celebrated, unless he made some box office movie, but that's only till he did the movie. Because at the end of the day, you're just walking around, and the rapper Meek Mill said this. He said, as a kid, can be on there with a $10,000 camera, and they'll call him goofy until he actually blow up. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? But like,
Mm-hmm.
so nobody was looking at me as somebody who, when I say unorthodox, it's like, okay, well, oh yeah, he's just a photographer. I mean, people say you're just a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's just a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
Until you start to think like, no, nobody's just a photographer. Like if somebody working a job, 95% of people who have jobs don't make more money than a photographer, a working photographer. Like,
Right.
because you can be making $500 for working for 3 hours. Not a lot of people make $500 work for 3 hours. So if
Not
you
a
can
lot of people
string
make
together,
$500 for 1 week, make it working in a week.
this is the
Okay.
this is the point. But especially, so it compounds when you're in our community, because we're all about what's popular.
Right.
But it wasn't until I started being in places like at the Super Bowl, and is a crash, Amtrak accident, and I'm on the scene shooting it, and or I'm with the Save the Children Foundation. I'm gone for a week. Nobody knows where I am because I'm with the Save the Children Foundation, and they're like, "What was you doing with them?" I'm shooting. Wow, and that type of thing. And now it's believable. So whatever you do, whether it's you cook, you take photos, you film, you're an artist. Like, you have to see that what you have is you can actually start there. But you have to look at yourself as a business. And I was just blessed to be in business before I became an artist. And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't look at my art I needed money, and I immediately went into the art saying who I need to work with that's going to put me in a position where I can take care of my family. Because
Mm-hmm.
in South Carolina, it wasn't no smorgasbord of supermodels or all this other stuff like that, major corporations and things like that. It's not in Columbia where I live, and so or where I lived. I don't live there anymore, but I said, okay, the law firms. I went to law firms. Nothing pretty about that. Nobody knows the work I'm doing, but I know what they were going to pay me. I know when I went and worked for a law firm, I was going to get paid more than the average person that do what I did. And I
Mm-hmm.
grew very, very fast. Working for the
Mm-hmm.
federal government, I studied. Nobody knows. A lot of people don't know that federal government pay photographers almost $500 million a year, but they don't know that, because somebody has to. When they're saying they're going to build on a stretch of land, are they just doing it blindly? No, somebody had to use some type of camera mechanism to
Right.
film that or
Right.
photo to do that, to document it. So I had to learn these things and I put business first. And this is the things I teach people like, what's your skill set? Start right there. One of my principles is do business on your own level. If you
Mm-hmm.
at the $500 level, start at $500. That's okay,
Yeah.
but everything I picked up was along the way. Even the old crappy jobs I've had benefited me because I've had a real estate license. I've worked at gas stations. I've done all of that stuff. And so, you know what? When somebody was talking to me about opening up a gas station and they wanted some coaching, I was able to talk to them because I understood the inner workings of a gas station.
Yes,
You
right.
know,
I like
you
that.
know,
I
and
like that.
so none of that stuff, none of my experiences were wasted.
Mm-hmm.
None of my experiences has been wasted. I drove cars for a car dealership for a little over a year, just going back and forth to the auction, getting cars for a car dealership. I learned how that worked. So when somebody came to me and said they want to get started on a car business and they needed coaching, I was the man for the job,
Mm-hmm.
but I only made $100 a day doing that. But when I got to a certain level, now they had to pay me per hour, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
way more than $100. So it was just, you have to start where you are and then learn. We don't want to learn. We want the microwavable scenario. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
know it's cliche, but it's the truth. It's like somebody on social media showed you the yacht. It showed you all the Rolexes and the Rolls Royces, and you say, "I need that right now." You see their finished product, and then you say on
Yeah,
Google, they're telling you everybody's finished product.
that's right.
You have to know what these people went through because to even know if you want to be in that, like you say, well, this person had to lose his mother to be a billionaire. Do you want to lose your mom to be a billionaire?
Exactly. No, and I like the transferable skills. Every time I tell my when I mentor, I used to go into the high schools before COVID. COVID kind of delayed that, but I would go into the high schools, and when I walked in the door, they had no idea who I was. But as I walked in, I was observant, and I always like to go in during the changing of the classes and just to see who they were, see what the kids were doing. I would go in, I would be waiting in the auditorium or in the gymnasium, and they would bring their career development classes in. And when they came in, especially when I was getting ready to do a career fair, when they would come in, I would be observing. And I would always say, you never know who's watching you. You have to, you never know. Somebody might be waiting for you to give you the opportunity of a lifetime. And when you have to take advantage of what's given to you. If you're at work, I worked for the Kroger company for 15 years, and there were a lot of people that had a lot of things that, oh, well, they this when I went in asking questions, well, who is this, who is that? I've never worked in the store. I always worked in the corporate office. Who is this, who is that? And they used to say, well, LaQuita, how did you do this, how did you do that? I managed a $2.8 million budget every month. And then I started doing the community awareness because I started asking questions. Well, who is this? Well, who is that? Well, what is this, what is that, what do they do? I can do this. I would ask questions and I would get projects. And you're right, those skills were transferable, because when I was planning corporate projects for Kroger, where I was planning $1 million projects, I had no idea that I would be planning projects on my own with my own business. So those
Definitely.
skills were transferable, and those contacts, when you build relationships, those relationships transfer. to personal relationships, then you have people that you can talk to and say, hey, let me run something by you, or can you direct me to the right person? So young people, if you're listening, those skills, be a sponge, soak in everything you can, because just because you may not need it for or use it often for what you're doing today, it will come back and it'll benefit you in the future. So
Yeah, and also they just need to know that their career is not dictated by how much money they make today.
exactly.
A lot of times, again, you're one thing that people you learn more even when you're not making any money. Like one thing I had to learn from a good friend of mine is about volunteering, because a lot of people, you're an entrepreneur and you're dealing with people that's not entrepreneurs, is a different mindset.
Mhm.
So, like as an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be a hunter. But when you're not an entrepreneur, you're not hunting. So they're not hunting for you to provide a service for them. You're hunting them.
Right.
And so if you're having a hard time getting in, the easiest way to get in is to do it for free. One of my biggest transitional jobs was I was serving my church. We had in 2015 we had a 1,000-year flood in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, in the whole state of South Carolina, but definitely in Columbia. And I was serving my church, just out helping them and helping out other individuals, passing out water. But I always had my camera with me, and the mayor was there, and I took a lot of great photos of him interacting with the community. And he asked for for the pictures. He got somebody from his office to ask for the pictures. Before you know it, I was doing his headshots, and before you know that, I was shooting major functions with him when Birmingham, Alabama was coming up with a lot of supplies for us, to help out the city. Well, the only camera that was there was mine. So the mayor of Birmingham is in Columbia shaking hands with our mayor. That's all over the newspaper, right?
Hmm.
Well, the
Hmm.
pictures that they're using are mine. you know. So that just catapulted because I was volunteering.
Hmm.
And when you volunteer, people give you knowledge, but everybody put the money into it. The money is not going anywhere. I promise
Hmm.
you. But we have to be willing to. Les Brown said it. You got to become what you want to be. You can't get doctor money and not become a doctor.
That's
You
right.
know, you have to become that. You don't get what you want, you get what you become. That's what he said. So you have to become that. And so as I grew as a person, as I volunteered and I put myself around the right people, the money was right around the corner because it's never going anywhere.
Hmm. I like that. Now, so you wrote a third book. So I know you said the book bug bit you. So tell us
Yes,
about the
Lord.
third book. I like that. I like that consistent encouragement through a crisis. So what was the
Yeah.
motivation behind what was the motivation behind that book?
Well, during the pandemic, during all of 2020, you just heard horrible advice. Throw this year away. Now
Go
you
to
think
sleep, wake up
about
next year. Yeah.
exactly. Now medically, I get it. Outside of medically, man, a lot of opportunities was created for people.
Yes, it
A lot
was.
of lot of lot of things was happening, and people were telling people the wrong things. And so, towards the end of the year, I did morning motivation videos every morning, and I would put them out on my social media. I did like 150 days straight, and because I had already written 2 books, and I was like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing this, but I'm gonna put some of this content in the book. And I did that. I picked out the top like 11. I think I said 10, but I had threw another one in there. I just had to put in there, and it was just amazing. But I just wanted to let people know that COVID-19 is a crisis, but it wasn't our first crisis,
Yes.
and it's sure enough not going to be our last crisis. And so you have to figure out a way to be consistently motivated, no matter what the crisis looks like. And so for my entrepreneurs, COVID-19, like that flood I told you about just 5 years prior, that was a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, that was a 1,000-year flood. A lot of businesses, if you could go through certain neighborhoods, are no longer there anymore,
Mm-hmm.
never
Mm-hmm.
to return. And that's a crisis. So they had to figure out a way to rebuild or to pivot or to shift. And crises come all the time. And you just have to figure out a way to be consistently motivated through those crises.
I like that. Before you came on, I was talking about my crisis. It's like I was in a crisis from the age of 4 to now. Still every single day, going through a medical tsunami. That's a crisis. Every doctor's appointment, it's a crisis. But how you handle that crisis, it determines your staying power. And
Yeah.
going through, you can't be a basket case trying to help somebody else not be a basket case. So and I have people all the time that say you do too much. Well, I don't even know what that means. So what does that mean? I do too much. Usually people who say that are people who are not doing anything.
Yeah, you're right.
You doing more than them. But I love that. I love that concept, because you're right. People's, there were a lot of bad things that happened. It was a crisis for the whole world at the same time. However,
Yeah.
there were a lot of great things. I've lost loved ones just like everybody else has. There were a lot of great
Hmm.
things. I started my publishing company in a crisis, and in a year's time, I published over 50 books, for people in a year's time. And so it's
Congratulations.
been absolutely amazing. And the stories, that everybody has a story. So I'm honored and blessed, and still learning how to pivot. Every day is something different. You're learning something new. And as you grow, and being an entrepreneur, you have to grow. You grow.
Yeah.
So what I learned in the beginning, I've learned that lesson, and so I move on to the next lesson and learn from that, make the corrections, make the changes if I need to, and keep moving. But I don't move backwards. I don't go
Yeah.
backwards. I don't think about what I did, what I could have, would have, should have. I keep going. And in my own, motivation through crisis, I just keep going because I'm too stubborn to stop.
Yeah,
So whatever
I
your
listen.
motivation is.
And one of the things too, they were playing on people's, lack of motivation. They was playing on people understanding that they were, people were distraught. People, well, you had people who were already not confident in themselves and things of that
Yeah,
nature.
yeah.
And so, if you permit me, I would just like give a couple of my titles of my
Oh, yes.
chapters, and it was just like, I said how to truly motivate someone, and I touched base on how it's that, people were not properly motivating someone, not properly giving people all the information. We've all been to church where, you give an amazing word, they join church and they got to go right back out to hell as soon as it's over with. What are you really putting in them that's going to really be able to keep them going to stay consistently motivated? They're not talking about being bigger than your problems. A lot of times that's rooted in growth, because we all got spankings. If you're a person of a certain age, we got spankings in our life. But when that mother, your mother, or your father, whoever came back around a couple years later, that's the same person, but you got stronger,
Mhm,
and so it
mhm.
didn't bother you anymore. Then I told them, give yourself some credit. We're too hard on ourselves. We're entirely too hard on ourselves because we're not him or her. We're not celebrating our small wins. We went from 1 to 10, but we're mad because we're not, at 100.
Mhm,
That's,
mhm.
we have to give ourselves credit from getting from 1 to 10. I ain't say stay there, but give yourself credit and acknowledgement and keep
'Cause you
moving while
made
you're
it
going
there.
towards
Because
100.
you made it to
And
10. You gotta get, I like that.
exactly, you're not where you were. Then I tell people you're doing a good job. You don't hear that enough, and you definitely don't hear from yourself. Like, hey, I'm
That's
doing a good job. You got to pat yourself on the back. Then, mastery over passion. One of the reasons why, passion is one of those uncontrollable, feelings and emotions, and we like to follow our passion. Well, we ain't following nothing that's uncontrollable. Now, I'm going to put it in my pocket and pull it out when I need it. But I'm going to follow this thing that I've mastered, this thing that I worked hard on, this thing that I know beyond knowing that I can provide. At every time I can pull out something, I know I'm going to be performing at a high level. And then when things get hard, I'm gonna go in my back pocket and get this passion out, because I'm gonna need that crazy side of me to go through this thing. But it ain't a place for me to stay. It's just to get to where I need to get to.
Now you
Then I
you
started
just did
talking.
a I'm sorry, you did a video on that recently, didn't you? Because
Yes.
I saw, I was on your Facebook page, so I was a troll. I went trolling on your Facebook page because I wanted to get to know you. But I saw that.
Uh,
I saw that, inspirational video you did on that when you talked about being
yeah,
a mastering your skills,
yeah.
basically.
It's so important. Then understanding how to focus during a paradigm shift, because that's what we were going through, a paradigm shift. Things are different now. And you got to be okay with that. A lot of time we are fighting for yesteryear. We're fighting for when we were the man or the woman, 10 years ago. You can be that again in this space and time, but you have to be willing to work on that paradigm shift and then focusing on facts over feelings. We have to stop lying to ourselves. Like,
Yes.
I don't want you to lie to nobody, but you definitely can't lie to yourself. You
I
can't
love
lie to yourself. And we have to tell ourselves the truth. We have to be realistic of where we are. Because think about it. If you lied and told yourself that you were in San Francisco, but you're trying to go to New York, you know,
you
you're gonna
got a
get a whole
problem.
bunch of crazy information, right? But you're in
Yes.
Georgia. You're in
Yes.
Georgia, so you can get to New York a little bit easier, right? A little bit
That's right.
cheaper. But that's the thing. If you're not going to tell yourself the truth, it's going to hurt you. But our feelings, we can't get over our feelings. And then we have to reconcile whatever we had wrong in the past. We have to reconcile it, and then focus on impacting people over impressing people. We have to impact individuals. That stays long. A lot of people aren't impressed, and sometimes we're impressing people who don't even care nothing about us.
The wrong
And last
impressing
but
the
not
wrong
least,
people.
exactly. And last but not least, ask yourself the question: who will you become after you've done all that? Who will you become? Now, who will you be? Like who you are? Who will you become? Because you're not going to get the things you want unless you become that person. Certain people, it takes a certain person to be able to do certain things. How you become that doctor, become that expert, that specialist, so that you can have all the money and the things you want. And if you can't say it, there's no way in the world you're going to be able to do it. So you got to say it. You got to be able to tell yourself that. Tell 15 other people that. Don't hide it. Tell them. Keep talking about it. The universe needs to know what you plan on being. And so that everybody can start moving out the way.
Oh my goodness, you just preached there. I'm telling you, you just preached a sermon. I have a friend that says, don't be fooled by your feelings, or your feelings will have you feeling like a fool.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Move away from the feelings. It ain't about a feeling, because our feelings trap us every time. I love that. The facts, not feelings. Facts, not feelings. I have to get that book. I really do. I have to get that book. That's amazing. So tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you.
All my social media is I am Jay Harleem on every social media platform. Of course, my website is www.jharleem.com. My books are everywhere. Books are sold Amazon, Walmart, pretty much everywhere. You can also get them on the website. If you're there, if you get them on the website, I sign them. I mean, just Google Jay Harleem, I come up. Google I Won't Starve. And my programs and things of that nature, stuff I've done, speaking engagements, all that stuff comes up. So I'm Googleable at this point.
So we go to the Google, go to the Google.
Yes, yes,
So there is a workshop or something that I saw that you're having coming up. Is that Saturday or Friday?
yeah. Saturday is going to be You Won't Starve Entrepreneur Development Workshop. It's totally free. So if someone is a new entrepreneur, new to entrepreneurship, considering entrepreneurship, you will want to be in the room. Just go ahead to the Eventbrite or go to my page. Go to jharleem.com and you'll be able to subscribe to the page, or go ahead and go in there and register. It's free, totally free. But you just have to register. And we'd love to have you there and learn some things. We're going to go through my 5 key principles of entrepreneur development and get you started right. And we'll talk about some other things we can do, but it's gonna be like quick 2 hours. Not gonna take a lot of time, but it's something I do quarterly. My way of giving back and staying connected to the individuals out there, especially the new entrepreneurs. So if you're looking for somebody, some knowledge, some wisdom, some understanding about going into the entrepreneurial game, you'll get it on Saturday if you come through there.
I like that. So get some of this wisdom, y'all. Get some wisdom. And let me ask you another question. So you talked about the government. You were teaching people how to take advantage of the government programs and how to get involved in all that. And I know you were you were traveling around. Do you do any of that online? So if there's somebody that's wanting to connect with you, you do that online.
Yes, I'm starting to get back to doing it online. Because again, I was usually working directly with those government entities. But now that the world has opened back up, I was in Long Beach doing something, helping out with their port scenario, trying to help minorities to get opportunities because they're making like 2% of the billions of dollars that are coming through that port, and so we're just trying to step that amount up. So yeah, I'm definitely helping other individuals to do that type of work as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jay Harleem, for your time. I know it's been a lot going on, and I know that you were busy. So thank you so much. You're super busy for taking the time to
No
come
problem. Thank
on
you.
and meet with us today and have this conversation. So thank you so much, listeners. This is LaQuita Parks. I am your host of The Power of Your Story. And remember, 100% of everybody living and dead has a story. So what's your story? Reach out to me and we can help you take your story from a thought to a realization. Until next time, be good, have a great one, and thank you so much.